Hey there, drone fans. Rick here again from Drone Valley. Today is an incredibly exciting day for me because DJI just announced their brand new smart controller for the Mavic 2 quads. Now, I haven't been inside the box yet. It only arrived about 10 minutes ago, but I want to explain what's going to happen in this clip because it's going to be a bit weird. This arrived over the holidays, which means it's 2 weeks until CES. They're going to announce this at CES. I was lucky enough to be invited into the NDA group to preview this product before they made the announcement. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to spend a lot of time with it. I'll put additional sections of this clip together, showing you the controls and talking about the technology and how it works with the Mavic products. And I'll build in as much information as I can over those next 2 weeks. But today's the unboxing, but you're going to see a bunch of different segments, again, over the next 2 weeks, where I'll build in other aspects of what this technology can do. So don't be freaked out about it. I couldn't talk about it, obviously, until it was announced by DJI, but I wanted to get my hands on it, really put my nerd hat on and take a look at it and give you an idea what the product can do for you. So enough talking for me, let's get inside the box. So for starters, it's in a standard DJI box, really nice, white box with a beautiful picture on the front. Gonna have to put my glasses on because I want to read some of the specs. So the model number of the product is an OT-112. So in case you want to look that up and look up the specs, it's actually called the DJI Smart Controller. It's a beautiful product. Again, it looks like a marriage of the original controller and a crystal sky monitor on the bottom. It's really what we've been looking for. And I know they've come out with sort of combination units before where they were integrated with a display. They did it with the Phantom 4, but this is really a brand new style of remote. It's actually constructed to be very small and efficient. And I love having an integrated remote with me because it gives me the display and the controller in one. I charge one product, put it in my bag, and I'm off and running. There's no worry about is it gonna work or not. All right, enough talking. Let's get inside the box. All right, so pretty nice packaging, as you'd expect from DJI. All white interior. Oh, there it is. There it is. So there's the remote. Oh man, this is gorgeous. This is gorgeous. All right, so let me put that down a second. Stay there. All right, inside the box, in addition to the remote, you got a pile of manuals. So there's a smart controller manual, which will tell you everything you need to know about the smart controller and explain all the buttons, knobs, and doodads on the front of that. I'll probably put a part of this clip together explaining that as well, so you'll have a real good idea of it when the product is released. I think it's going to be released at the show, and then you'll be able to order it and you'll have an advanced notice of what's going on. Here's some consumer law that explains exactly what your warranty is on the product and what you can expect if you're having issues to get a hold of support. And then last is the in the box section. So let's take a look at this. So in the box, and I'll take a look in a second, is the controller itself. There's a charging cable. It looks like it's a USB-C connection for charging. Yep, it's a USB-C connection for charging. We'll have to see if that turns out to be a quick charge connection like a power delivery USB-C or a standard one. Oh, they give you a couple of extra joystick for the top for the screw-ins, and then the manuals. All right, that's interesting they didn't include a charger. But let's take a look inside this box and see what's in here. So in this box, on the one end, we've got a cable. So that's the, oh, here you go. There's your joystick tips on the top. So I imagine there's probably some buried inside the unit as well, but these are spares. And then you've got the cable, and the cable is one end is a USB-A connection, and the other end is a standard USB-C connection. So it's nice they give you the cable to charge this thing, and it's a heavy-duty cable as well. Very heavy-duty, actually, and quite long. I'm going to say about 3 feet. So a nice long, large charging cable there. Nice length on that. Put that guy aside for a second. And then this box has still got some weight to it, so what's on this end? On this end, we've got a, oh, hey, there is a charger. All right, so the in-the-box manual's missing the charger, but there's a charger included. Let's take a look at the specs on the charger. Oh, here we go. All right, so the charger itself is a standard 5-volt 3-amp. It's also got a variable voltage from 3 to 8 volts. Oh, and a 12 volt as well. So this looks like it's an adaptive charger. Looks like it's going to be a fast charger that may be able to take advantage of the QC standard, which is used on most Android devices today. QC1, QC2, or QC3 is the latest quick charge standard. I know this is going to run some version of Android, so I'll test that and see what's going on there. But it would be really nice if they had some type of quick charging capabilities to allow you to get this thing up to 50% so you can get back out and fly really quickly. All right, enough rambling on about that. Let's talk a little bit more about the controller. So size-wise, I'm very impressed with it. I mean, it feels like you took the original controller and actually built in a display in the bottom, which is exactly what they did, but it's very well balanced in the hands. Let me get this wrapping off here if I can gently to take a look underneath. Oh, you peel it off the back. Here we go. All right, so let me get that out of the way. Looks like a protective thing on there. I'll just put that aside. No joystick, so let's take a look underneath. Oh, this is interesting. Look at this. So both of the antenna pop up together. So they're not single antennas like they were before. And hey, there's your joystick. So they've got the joysticks stored underneath the antenna on the bottom, which is kind of cool. We put those guys on real quick so I can get a feel for how the joysticks feel in my hand. Man, I'm excited about this thing because I fly those Mavic 2s almost every day, and I love the controller I use today. The controller works well, and I use an iPad 4 mini, and it works great, but it's not as bright as I'd like it outside. It's also a bit of a hassle to connect it up. You got cabling and stuff to deal with. This is all one unit. It's all beautiful in one piece. I don't want to turn it on because I have to activate it, but again, there's the USB-C connection on the bottom. I'll do blow-ups of all this. USB-C connection on the bottom for charging. On the top, I've got, let me get the glasses out again. Oh, that's nice. It even stands up. Look at that. So on the top, I've got a HDMI connection. Good for you, DJI. Yeah, they include a full-size HDMI connection, so I can output the video from this to a monitor or maybe a recording device if I choose to. I've got a USB-C connection, a USB-A connection on there. Now, I'm wondering what that's for. Since I don't have to tether a display to it, that's probably for the updates. So maybe that's what I connected to my computer with if I'm going to push updates to the controller. I'd expect to do the updates over the air because it has Wi-Fi on it, but we'll have to see. And then there's a micro SD card slot up there. On the front, you've got a pretty conventional unit, multi-directional switch, 2 joysticks. I've got a pause button, return to home button, power button, and I've got the standard spin wheels on the bottom, and you've got record both video and picture. And on the very bottom, when you flip up the antennas, you've got 2 specialized buttons down there. So very, very well balanced. Now, let me compare it to the original Mavic 2 controller. So here's the original Mavic 2 controller, just to give you a feel side by side of how large they are. And again, I think this is certainly smaller, and I'll do some comparisons in a minute. It's smaller than having this set up with an iPad 4 on the bottom of it. So the iPad 4 is a lot deeper. It is a bigger display, so that may just be a matter of, you know, having a larger display hanging off the bottom of it. Maybe that's something you're looking for. For me, I like the fact that I can have, I can't stand that guy up. I like the fact that I can have the integrated display on there because for me, again, charging one device, going out and knowing that it's ready to go and knowing exactly what the battery levels are on this thing is really important. Although this works really well, I also want a brighter display. Now, I read somewhere in the specifications that they sent me, part of the NDA, that it's 1,000 nits, which means it's a super bright display, much brighter than what the iPad 4 would be. But again, I'll test those side by side and give you some comparisons when I get a chance to do that. I do want to get into a little bit more detail of this. I want to charge it. I want to activate it. I'll show you how to do all that stuff. But the unboxing includes, like I'd mentioned, the remote, the manuals, a really nice charger for the wall, and a USB-A to USB-C cable to charge this guy up. So that's pretty much it for the oh, and I forgot the extra joystick tips over there. So that's all I have for the unboxing section of it. Stay tuned, and what I'm going to do over the next 2 weeks is either cut this into a bunch of clips, or I may build in a couple more sections to this clip, just to give you a feel for how it looks up close and what all the buttons and knobs and things do on the front. So stay tuned. Now we'll take a closer look at the smart controller. I'll explain what the buttons do and point out some of its unique features. The first and most obvious change is the incorporation of this large 5.5-inch high brightness touchscreen display right in the center of the product. Now that's not your average display. It'll actually produce over 1,000 nits of brightness, which means it's far brighter than your average tablet or phone that you may be using today on your controller. On the front of the unit, you've got 2 joysticks. Now holding it in my hands, it does feel a little bit wider than the standard controller for the Mavic 2, and I'll put them side by side in a minute and check that out. But the joysticks fall right under your thumbs very naturally. They positioned them well. They're not too far in where you've got to reach to get at them. It's a very comfortable position for those joysticks. On the top, there's the return to home button. You'll hit that. It'll cause an emergency return to home on the quad. That's your power button. You'll tap it and hold it to turn it on, just like you do most of the DJI products. This is the 5D joystick right here. Now I haven't checked that yet, but I'm assuming the function on that's going to be the same as it is on the Mavic 2. This is a pause button. If you hit that, it'll actually stop the quad wherever it happens to be and hold its position. And this is the flight mode switch in the center. There are 2 more buttons on the outside here. This is a return button and this is an enter button, and both of those affect your menu choices on the screen. We look on the top of the unit and we've got a full-size USB-A connection over here, and again, I'm not sure what that's used for. It may be used for updating firmware and such to it, but I'll investigate that. There's a micro SD card in the center which you can use to record cached video off the quad when you're flying. And here's a full-size HDMI connection, which is a great thing. So this can connect to external monitors or external recorders if you want to record the activity on the screen. On the top, you have the focus button and your picture button. On the right, you have a record button for your video and 2 wheels here for adjustments on the quad. On the bottom, you've got 2 custom buttons, just like you do on the standard controller. Your antenna pops out like this, and you can see that you've got a little hiding space right here for your 2 joysticks to plug in there to fold down flat. Nothing on the right side of the controller to worry about, nothing on the left side. But if I look down the bottom, I've got a USB-C connection over there, which you use to charge the device, and I've got either speaker or vent holes down the bottom. And again, I'll do a little more investigation. I've only had this thing in my hands for about 30 minutes. Now, there are two threaded shafts right here that I'm not quite sure what they're used for. Now, that may be for bolting other accessories on here down the road. I'm not sure, but I did a little playing around before, and it turns out that they're actually the same thread size as the joysticks. Now, I don't know what that would do for you. I don't think it's there to keep the extra joysticks with you, but it may very well just be a storage space for the joysticks when you're packing it away, or maybe for the extra set of joysticks. Now, I did want to do a comparison side by side with the old controller, because there's a few things that I was curious about. The first one being the position of the joysticks. I think these joysticks are a little bit wider apart than the original controller. So I have the original Mavic 2 controller right here. Let me pull that out. And let's take a look at the joysticks first. Yep, I was right. So these are a little closer in, and these are a little further out. It's not much, but it's enough. So that is interesting. But again, being a little wider because of the display, it does feel very natural that these are right under your thumbs, just like these guys are. The other thing I was curious about was the antenna, and absolutely these are different. So when I hold them side by side, you can see that the antenna on the new unit are closer in, and these are further out. And that's an interesting twist, because typically when you're broadcasting a certain frequency, for you to have those antennas aligned next to each other, there's a very finite distance they have to be apart. So there may be something different in the controller. Maybe the frequencies you're using are a little bit wider. I'm not sure, but I'll do some investigation on that as well. But other than that, it's pretty much the same, except for obviously the display in the center. Now, I do have to spend a lot of time investigating if this can be used with other quads. Right now at the point of release, they're saying it's a Mavic 2 only. So it'll work with the Mavic 2 Pro, the Mavic 2 Zoom, and I'm assuming the Mavic 2 Enterprise, but I haven't tested it with those yet. But I will be out this afternoon flying this with both of my Mavics, actually my Mavic 2s, to test it out and see how it handles, and I cannot wait to activate this thing. So if you stay tuned, I'm actually going to do the activation next, show you how you register this and activate the device, then I'll show you how it connects up to your quad, and I'll give you one extra hint at the end of this about how to charge this. And then I've got a series of clips coming this week where I'm going to go into much more detail about a bunch of secret features that are built into this that I couldn't possibly put into one clip. So stay tuned, then I'll show you how to activate the unit. Activating your DJI Smart Controller for the first time is a very straightforward process that you can easily complete by tapping out the correct answers on your touchscreen to the questions being asked. To make it even easier, I'll do a walk through the menus now so you can follow along. When you first power up the controller, the initial screen asks for your language of choice, and you can scroll across. When you pick the language you're comfortable with, tap Next. The next screen is the DJI Terms of Use and Privacy Policy, and you can scroll up on that and read through it if you'd like. When you're comfortable, tap Agree. The next screen asks you to choose your country or region, and you can scroll up through all the different choices you have on that page. When you've selected the region you'd like, tap Next. The next screen is going to ask for your Wi-Fi credentials. Now you'll need a Wi-Fi connection because you'll have to sign into your DJI.com account to activate your warranty on the smart controller. So enter your Wi-Fi credentials. When those are complete, tap Next. This screen is asking for your region, your time zone, your date, and your local time. Now because the unit's got GPS in it, these details might be correct, but just verify them before you tap Next. When you're happy with the details, tap Next. Now this screen's going to ask you to log into your DJI account. So you'll need your email or your phone number and your password. Enter those details and tap Sign In. If you don't have an account, you can create the account on this page by tapping Create Account. The next screen is going to activate this controller. Verify that that email or phone number is correct, and you make sure that you've got the right account entered and you're activating it against that account. Now tap the Activate button. At this point, they're going to ask if you want to be part of the product improvement project. DJI gathers a lot of details from the controller about how it's being used, if there are error conditions that crop up. You have a choice to either join this or not join this, or even join it later. So you can either join the program now or tap Not Now. The next screen is going to go into a firmware check. When you get the product initially, there may be firmware released after the ship date of the product, so it's always good before you use it for the first time to check to see if there's an update to the firmware. This will take a few minutes and it'll come back and let you know if you've got the latest version of firmware or if it needs an update. If it does need an update, you'll see a screen like this. You can choose to download the firmware and do the update before you start flying. You also have the choice to not do the update and just fly with the current firmware. Once the firmware has been started as a download, or if you're going to stick with the original firmware on the controller, you'll come up with an activation success screen. If you tap OK, it'll walk you through a few screens that'll explain how you can use the controller and what some of the on-screen options are for making adjustments to the quad and flying. And that's pretty much it. So once you get that activation screen, you're all set to fly. The next thing you'll need to do is to bind the controller with your quad, and I'll show you how to do that next. In this section, I'll show you how you can easily link your new smart controller with your Mavic 2 Pro or Mavic 2 Zoom. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, can I tether two remotes to the quad at the same time? I don't know. I haven't tested it yet, but I promise you this week I'll spend time going through that exact test. I'll put a clip together and let you know if you can or you can't, and how you can do it if it's possible. But for now, let's pretend you want to use the smart controller exclusively with your Mavic 2. I'll show you how to do that process. It's really straightforward. It's 3 simple steps. But before you get started, I always recommend pulling the props off the quad, especially if you're going to do this in the house. Not that anything strange is going to happen, but what if the thing spun off and took off and hit the ceiling? You wouldn't want that happening in the house. So I always pull the props off before I go through a linking exercise. First step in the process is to turn on the quad. Tap the button and hold it. Once you hear the quad start to spin up, you can wait a second. It's going to go through a power on self-test routine. It's going to spin up the motors, check the battery, do a bunch of internal function checking. It's going to spin the gimbal around, make sure it's got a home point and there's no obstructions. Once it's done and it's settled down, you're then going to turn on the smart controller. You'll turn that on the same way. Tap it and hold it. Once it strows fully up, it'll go through a power on self-test routine as well. Now, since it's the first time you're linking it, it'll actually come up and say, do you want to link to your quad? So we'll let it go through its boot routine and see what happens. It's thinking. Can't rush it. All right, we booted up. Now it's saying, would you like to link to your drone, connect to your drone? Say yes. It immediately brings up the DJI Go 4 application. Once that finishes, we enter the device right here. The only choice you have, by the way, is Mavic 2 at this point. So that should be a pretty good indicator that that's all I really want you to connect this to. But I'm going to see if I can break the rules there a little bit. All right, so on this screen, it says connect to aircraft. It's the top choice. Connect to that. It's going to walk you through the process just as I'm explaining it here. Hit the next button. Hit the next button. Now, on the quad, you've got to put it in linking mode. You've got to tell it you've got a new controller and you should be looking for it. The way you do that is on the bottom of the quad on this side. So if you're facing the quad away from you, it's on the right side. There's a little door down there. Pop that bottom door. You'll see a green light on there. There's a button right next to it. Now, I have to caution you, that button looks like you should be pushing it with a pen, but if you're a fan of the channel, you know I've done an entire clip on how you can easily break your quad by pushing too hard on that button, because there's nothing behind it and it's going to pop off the printed circuit board. So the only thing you want to push that button with is your big fat finger. So use your finger, tap that button. You see it turn red? That means it's in linking mode right now and it's looking for a remote controller. So let's see if I hit the link button over here, what happens. So, oh, don't drop the controller. Next, and link. It's in linking mode, and that turned green, and that one turned green. So I'm linked up, I'm ready to go. Connection successful. Let's see, done. Boom, I'm ready to fly. So now if I go into it, it's going to do a version check to make sure this has got the latest firmware on it that's compatible with this one. Once it goes through that firmware check, it may ask you to do an update to the firmware. My recommendation is you do that update because there's functionality built into this that may have not been in the original Mavic 2 controller. You want to make sure you got the latest version of both. The other thing you have to remember is if you do a firmware update on your quad and you've got multiple batteries, you might want to cycle those batteries through as part of the firmware update, because a lot of times people forget that and they'll update the quad and update one battery. Then they'll go out in the field, try to put the second battery in that hasn't been updated, and they're getting errors on their controller and they're wondering what's going on. So I always like to update the quad, update the controller, and update all the batteries that I happen to have. And that's pretty much it. I probably spent more time explaining it than it takes you to do the linking, but that essentially is how you link your brand new smart controller with your existing Mavic 2 Pro or Mavic 2 Zoom. I'm sure one of the first questions a lot of you will have is how does the weight of the new smart controller compare to the weight of the original Mavic 2 controller? So let's weigh the smart controller first. Looks like 1 pound, 8.6 ounces. Let's do it in grams as well for our friends across the pond. 698 grams. All right. Now let's do the Mavic 2 controller. Looks like about 10.9 ounces. But that's not a fair comparison because you've got to use a tablet or a phone. I use an iPad 4 mini, so let's add that to the scale. Combined, they're 1 pound, 5.4 ounces. But you also need a cable to connect it to. So I'm going to use a really short cable to keep it light. That brings us up to 1 pound, 5.7 ounces, or 614 grams. So you can see the comparison between the two. I went from 1 pound, 8.6 down to 1 pound, 5.7. So it is a difference of about 3 ounces, which isn't that much when you consider the additional functionality that the smart controller brings to the game. One other interesting feature I wanted to point out as part of this overview for the smart controller has to do with charging. Now, I mentioned during the original unboxing that the product is charged through a USB-C connection on the bottom, and that's important because USB-C is the latest standard for USB chargers, and it provides for higher voltage and higher currents for compatible devices and allows you to charge them a lot quicker. For example, a lot of the new iPhones with the appropriate cable can be quick charged using a high power USB-C charger. The same is true for Android, and since this runs an Android operating system, I was wondering if it was quick charge compatible, so I thought I'd do a little bit of testing. I took a standard 5-volt USB charger, connected it up to the device, and I found that in fact it does charge, and you can see the strobing lights there indicating that it's a little less than 50% charge and it's working its way up to a full charge. Then I plugged in the charger that came with the unit just to see if there was any difference, and it turns out initially it looks exactly the same, where you can see it's strobing slowly, but watch what happens. It makes an adjustment because it knows it's got a high performance charger connected up to it. You can see the strobes are twice as fast. It's drinking electrons from that charger a lot faster than it would from a standard charger, which means this is going to charge incredibly quick using the charger that came with the unit. Now I'm going to do a ton of testing to find out if there are other compatible chargers, what battery banks work with it. You guys know that I love digging into those nerdy details. But for now, the rule of thumb would be you can use any charger you want to charge this, but if you want to get back out the door and start flying a lot quicker, stick with the charger that came with the unit. That's all I had for today, so I hope you found this clip helpful, and I promise you over the next couple of weeks, I'll be testing this smart controller like crazy. Every day we have decent weather, I'll be out flying the Mavic 2 Pro or the Mavic 2 Zoom with this controller, so I understand everything it can do and what kind of value it provides so I can explain it to you guys. I know a lot of people have been anticipating the release of this product for quite some time. There have been rumors flying around forever that this thing was going to come out in the springtime. And it's kind of a weird situation, as I mentioned at the top of the clip, because for me, I'm a week and a half today away from CES. But for you guys, today's the first day of CES, and DJI just announced it at the show. So the question you're going to have is it worth the money? I don't really have an answer to that because I don't even know what the price of this is. In the NDA material they sent us, all I got was the fact that they're going to sell it as a standalone controller. They'll also sell it as part of a package with a Mavic 2 Pro or Zoom. So if you own the Mavic 2 today, you can pick it up as an accessory and add it to your kit. If you don't own a Mavic 2 today, you can buy a brand new Mavic 2 Pro or Zoom with this controller included as an upgrade package. So the question about whether it's worth it or not is a tough one to answer because without knowing the retail price, I'm guessing. But I will tell you this. A lot of people that fly the Mavic 2 have asked me about adding a Crystal Sky monitor to it or what tablet they should buy to add to it. So when you take that original Mavic 2 controller and add a Crystal Sky to it, or add a tablet to it, or an expensive phone to it, that's a pretty expensive combination of gear. And then you've still got to worry about connecting it up with a cable and making sure firmware levels are right and everything else. This one package solves all those problems for you. So once we get the announced price on this thing, it'll be easier for me to answer that question. But my initial observation is, this is the perfect answer for me from a controller perspective. And I think most companies are going to head towards this integrated controller style because it solves a lot of problems. It's a closed ecosystem that allows them to control the operating system, the firmware, the interaction with the quad. It's just a whole simpler way to fly. So for me, without even knowing the price, I'm going to say, yeah, it's definitely worth it as a value. So we'll see where it goes from there. But again, I'll find out the price just like you guys will today when the announcement takes place. But I love this thing. And the little time I've played with it already, it's solidly built. It looks like a really quality product from DJI. And I know a lot of you guys say, hey, you're a DJI fanboy. It's stuff like this that drives me crazy about DJI. Who else comes out with a controller looking like this? It's a beautiful piece of kit. All right, so the last thing I'll say is, if you're curious about this, you decide you want to take the plunge and buy a Mavic 2 Pro or Zoom, or you want to buy the controller, I've got a link below. It'll take you right to the DJI site. If you use that link, we get a little credit with DJI, so help us out and use that link below if you want to. I'm going to be doing a ton more clips on this, as I said. I'll try and do a couple from the show floor. I'll certainly have some questions for DJI when I'm out there at the show. But if there's something you want to know about this controller, because I'm going to be doing extensive testing over the next couple of weeks, drop it in the comments below. I'll do my best to work your questions and your curious minds into the testing schema so we make sure we get the answers you need. So when you're ready to buy this thing, you'll have every answer you need to make sense for you, whether this is the right value for you or not. So that's pretty much it for today. So thanks an awful lot for watching. I love putting these kind of clips together, especially for new gear like this. So expect a lot more coming this week. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button, because not only are we going to be spending a lot of time on the smart controller, but we're going to have a whole week's worth of clips coming out of CES. We got a lot of things lined up at CES for interviews in the booth and talking to special people out there. So you're not going to want to miss any of that. Anyway, that's it. So thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, I'm going outside and fly. Happy flying to you guys.